Hello everyone! Before we start, make sure to like and subscribe to the channel and leave a comment with where you're from and what time you're watching. That way, YouTube will keep showing you stories just like this one. Now, let's begin. The laughter echoed through the schoolyard, sharp, cruel, and unrelenting. A small boy sat on the cold pavement, clutching his crutch like it was the only thing tethering him to the earth. His glasses were cracked, his palms scraped and bleeding. Around him, the other children circled, chanting in cruel unison. "Can't even stand straight, Dominic. Maybe your daddy should buy you new legs." The taunts drew a few hesitant laughs from teachers watching from a distance, pretending not to hear. No one wanted trouble. No one ever did. Mira Evans froze near the edge of the playground, clutching the attendance sheets she'd been delivering to the office. The paper crinkled in her hand as she watched the scene unfold, a ring of cruelty tightening around one fragile boy. Something hot twisted in her chest. It wasn't just anger, it was memory. She'd seen those eyes before. Desperate, humiliated, silent. Years ago, in a hospital room where her younger brother, Caleb, had gripped her hand through endless nights of pain. He'd had the same look before the cancer took his voice, then his strength, then him entirely. Mira took a slow breath. "Not again," she whispered. Then she dropped the papers and moved. "Enough!" The word cracked through the air like lightning. The boys froze, startled. One snickered. "Who are you supposed to be?" "The one who will call every parent in this yard," she said, voice low but steady. "Now move." Her tone held something that made even the boldest step back. She walked straight to the boy, crouched, and gently picked up his fallen crutch. "You okay?" she asked softly. He didn't answer. He just stared at her with wary, intelligent eyes, too old for his small face. "I'm Mira," she said. "I work here now. Let's get you inside, yeah?" He hesitated, then gave a small nod. By the time she led him toward the nurse's office, the crowd had scattered, but she could feel their stares burning into her back, a mix of guilt, curiosity, and something else. Fear. Inside, the boy sat quietly while she dabbed antiseptic on his scraped palms. He didn't flinch, didn't cry, just stared at the wall like he'd learned long ago that showing pain only invited more of it. "What's your name?" she asked gently. He hesitated before answering. "Dominic." "That's a strong name." He shrugged, glancing down. When the nurse entered, Mira handed over the file. "He slipped," she said, though they both knew better. The nurse only nodded. "Best not to make a scene," she murmured. Mira bit her tongue. She wanted to ask why no one helped him, why the teachers looked away. But something in the nurse's eyes stopped her. "Be careful," the nurse whispered once Dominic left the room. "You don't know who that boy's father is." Mira frowned. "Should I?" The nurse gave her a look that was equal parts pity and warning. "Everyone in this city does." That night, Mira couldn't sleep. She replayed the scene in her mind over and over, the laughter, the fear, the way the boy didn't even try to defend himself. Who was he? And why did everyone act like touching his life was a mistake? She didn't have long to wonder. The next morning, the schoolyard buzzed with whispers. Black cars, sleek, tinted, and silent, lined the gates like a procession of shadows. 3 men in suits stepped out, their movements precise and unnervingly calm. They spoke to the principal briefly before turning toward the building. Teachers peered through windows, students went silent. Then Mira heard her name over the intercom. "Miss Evans, please come to the principal's office immediately." Her stomach tightened. When she entered, the principal looked pale, nervous. "Mira," he said quickly, "these gentlemen are here to speak with you." The tallest man, clean-shaven, wearing dark gloves, inclined his head. "Miss Evans," he said evenly, "Mr. Romano would like a word." "Mr. Romano?" she repeated, confused. "Dominic's father," the man replied. Something cold slid down her spine. She'd heard that name before, whispered in the markets, muttered by police officers under their breath. Lorenzo Romano, the man who ran half the city's underworld and all of its fear. And his men were here. For her. The car ride was silent, except for the hum of the engine. Through the tinted glass, the city blurred into streaks of gray and gold. Mira's heart pounded, but she refused to show it. She had done nothing wrong. She had simply defended a child. When they arrived, the Romano estate towered like a fortress on the edge of the hills, black iron gates, marble fountains, guards at every corner. The car stopped before a mansion that looked more like a museum than a home. Inside, the silence was heavier than any threat. And then she saw him. Lorenzo Romano sat behind a vast mahogany desk, a glass of whiskey untouched before him. He was younger than she expected, mid-40s, sharp suit, eyes like carved stone. Power clung to him the way shadows cling to firelight. "You're the one who defended my son," he said. It wasn't a question. Mira met his gaze. Someone had to. For a long moment, he said nothing. Then, to her surprise, he stood. "Most people don't interfere," he said quietly. "They know better." "Maybe they should know compassion, too," she replied. A faint smile touched his lips. Not amusement, but something unreadable. "Dominic doesn't let anyone near him, yet he told me about you." Mira exhaled slowly. "He's a good kid." "He's my only child," Lorenzo said, voice hardening. "And people like to remind him that he's different." Different. The word hung heavy in the room. "I didn't help him out of pity," Mira said softly. "I helped him because no one else would." Lorenzo studied her for a long time before nodding. "You'll continue working with him," he said finally. "Personally?" Mira blinked. "What?" "You stood up for him. Now you'll teach him. Protect him. You're under my protection now." Her breath caught. "Mr. Romano, He raised a hand. "Refuse, and you'll never work in this city again." The room seemed to shrink, but when she looked into those dark, haunted eyes, she saw something that startled her. Not menace, but fear. A father's fear. Mira nodded slowly. "All right, I'll help him." "Good," he said quietly. "Then your life just changed, Miss Evans." That night, as the city lights flickered beyond her window, Mira sat awake, thinking of the boy with the broken crutch, the child she couldn't walk away from. She had no idea she had just stepped into a world where mercy was weakness, loyalty was currency, and love could get you killed. And so it began. The following morning, the whispers started before Sophia even reached the school gates. "She's the one they picked up yesterday. Did you see the cars? They say the boy's father runs half the city." Sophia pretended not to hear. Her hands gripped the strap of her bag, knuckles white. St. Aveline Academy suddenly felt smaller, the laughter thinner, the smiles hollow. Every teacher who greeted her did so with a careful distance, as though she carried something contagious. By noon, the principal called her in again. He looked pale, sweat glistening on his forehead. "Miss Evans," he began softly, "you've been formally invited to the Moretti estate this afternoon. Mr. Dante Moretti would like to thank you personally for what you did for his son." Sophia blinked. "Moretti?" The principal hesitated. "Nico's father." Her pulse stumbled. "I thought his last name was Romano." "Romano is his mother's name." The principal interrupted quickly. "Mr. Moretti prefers privacy." He slid a card across the desk, cream-colored, heavy, embossed in gold. The Moretti estate car will arrive at 3 p.m. Do not decline. The principal met her gaze with something close to pity. Whatever happens, Miss Evans, just be polite. He's not a man you want to offend. The car arrived exactly on time. It was black, silent, and impossibly clean. The driver said nothing as she climbed in, only nodded once and pulled away from the curb. As the city slipped behind them, the roads widened, lined with tall cypress trees that whispered secrets to the wind. When the gates of the Moretti estate appeared, Sophia's breath caught. It wasn't a home. It was a fortress. Iron gates towered overhead, flanked by guards in tailored suits. Beyond them stretched a long driveway, bordered by manicured gardens and white marble statues that gleamed beneath the afternoon sun. The car rolled to a stop before a mansion so vast it seemed to breathe power. 2 guards opened the doors before she could reach for the handle. "Miss Evans," one said curtly, "Mr. Moretti is expecting you." Inside, the air was cold, perfumed faintly with cedar and money. The marble floors reflected chandeliers like pools of gold. Servants moved silently along the halls, eyes down, as if afraid to be seen. Every step echoed. Every echo reminded her she didn't belong here. They led her into a study lined with dark wood and glass. Heavy curtains framed a single window overlooking the gardens. Behind an ornate desk sat Dante Moretti, tall, composed, and too still. He didn't look up immediately. His pen moved over paper with the precision of a surgeon. When he finally lifted his gaze, Sophia felt the air shift. His eyes were the color of smoke, calm yet assessing, the kind of gaze that saw everything and revealed nothing. "Miss Evans," he said, voice low and controlled, "you've caused quite the stir." "I didn't mean to," she managed. "I just defended my son," he finished for her. "Few people dare to." There was no warmth in his words, only the faintest trace of curiosity. He stood, coming around the desk with the silent confidence of a man who never needed to raise his voice to be obeyed. "I understand children can be cruel," Dante continued, "but I also understand adults can be opportunistic. So tell me, Miss Evans, was it kindness that drove you, or calculation?" Sophia blinked. "Excuse me?" He smiled faintly, though it didn't reach his eyes. "You wouldn't be the first to use my son for attention. Pity earns headlines. Sympathy opens doors." Her heart thudded once, hard. "With respect, Mr. Moretti, I didn't even know who your son was. I just saw a child being hurt." Silence. A heavy, measuring silence. Then he nodded once, as though confirming something for himself. "I see." He gestured toward a chair. "Sit." She obeyed. "I've spoken to Nico's teachers," Dante said. "They tell me he doesn't engage. He resists therapy, refuses lessons. But he spoke about you last night." Sophia's breath caught. "He did?" "She didn't look away," he said. Dante's tone softened almost imperceptibly. "That's rare for him, for anyone." He poured a glass of water and placed it in front of her. "You have something I need, Miss Evans." Sophia hesitated. "And what is that?" "Patience," he replied. "Courage." He paused, then added, "and a tendency to ignore good advice." Before she could respond, he slid a sleek folder across the table. Inside, a contract gleamed with neatly typed lines. Position: private tutor and companion to Nico Moretti. Residence: Moretti Estate. Compensation: 240,000 years annually. Conditions: confidentiality absolute, termination by employer only. Sophia stared. I can't accept this. I'm just a teacher's aide." "You're the first person my son has spoken to willingly in months," Dante interrupted. "He trusts you." That makes you valuable." His tone didn't sound like a compliment. It sounded like a warning. "I don't understand," she said quietly. "Why me?" Dante stepped closer, close enough for her to feel the gravity of his presence. "Because you saw him," he said. "Not the limp, not the name, just him. That's exactly why you're dangerous." Her mouth went dry. "Dangerous?" He smiled, faint, predatory. "To people who prefer he remain invisible." She swallowed. "And if I say no?" He leaned in slightly. "Then you'll go back to your small apartment and your smaller paycheck, pretending you didn't just get invited into a world few survive in." "I'm not forcing you, Miss Evans. I'm giving you a choice." It didn't sound like one. Sophia looked down at the contract again. The ink shimmered faintly under the chandelier. Nico's face flashed in her mind. The bruises, the trembling hands, the quiet way he'd said thank you before leaving the nurse's office. He didn't need another tutor. He needed someone who saw him. Slowly, she nodded. "I'll do it." Dante's gaze lingered on her, unreadable. Then he extended a hand. "Welcome to the Moretti estate." His grip was firm, cold, final, the kind of handshake that sealed more than business. When she stepped outside, the sun had begun to set, casting long shadows across the marble courtyard. The same guards stood watch, unmoving. High above, the mansion's windows glimmered like eyes. As she descended the steps, she felt it, that prickling sensation between her shoulder blades. Someone was watching. A curtain shifted on the second floor. A child's silhouette stood framed by the light. "Nico." Sophia raised a hand hesitantly. The curtain fell back into place. The air was thick with silence. By the time she reached the car, her decision weighed heavier than the folder in her hands. The driver opened the door. "Congratulations, Miss Evans," he said without expression. "You've just joined the Moretti household." As the gates closed behind them, Sophia glanced back one last time at the looming mansion. It looked beautiful in the fading light and utterly inescapable. She didn't yet know that she hadn't accepted a job. She had stepped into the lion's den. The gates closed behind her like the walls of a fortress. By morning, Sophia Evans was no longer just a teacher's aide from St. Aveline Academy. She was an employee of the Moretti family, a name that carried weight like gravity, pulling everyone within its orbit. A black-suited driver arrived at dawn to collect her things. She barely had time to pack before she was back in the car, rolling through the same iron gates that now felt more like bars. Inside the mansion, the air was colder than she remembered, perfumed faintly with wax and restraint. The servants moved like whispers, eyes averted, steps soundless on marble floors. No one smiled. No one spoke, unless spoken to. A tall woman with silver hair, Mrs. Corvey, the head housekeeper, greeted her with the efficiency of someone who had long stopped pretending warmth. "Your quarters are on the east wing," she said briskly. "Breakfast is at 7. Tutoring begins at 8. Mr. Moretti expects progress." "Progress?" Sophia asked. "With the boy," Mrs. Corvey replied, lowering her voice. "He hasn't spoken to a soul here in weeks. Maybe you'll be different." Her first glimpse of Nico came in the conservatory, a glass-walled room filled with light and silence. He sat cross-legged on the floor, a sketchpad open across his knees. Blueprints, gears, stars, pages of mechanical drawings that looked too precise for a child his age. "Those are beautiful," Sophia said gently. He didn't look up. She stepped closer, careful not to cast her shadow across his work. "Astronomy?" He nodded once, pencil still moving. "You like machines?" Another nod. "I used to build models with my brother," she offered. He said machines made sense because they didn't lie. That earned her a glance, brief but curious. Sophia smiled softly. I think he was right. Nico hesitated, then turned the sketchpad toward her. It showed a drawing of a small telescope, hand-drawn but perfect. That's yours? She asked. He nodded again, this time with the faintest flicker of pride. Over the next few days, they settled into a rhythm. Lessons in the morning, piano practice in the afternoon, quiet reading before dinner. Nico's intelligence astonished her. He solved equations faster than she could write them, memorized constellations, and spoke of gravity like it was poetry. Yet there was something fragile beneath his brilliance, a hesitation, a constant flinch, like he expected the world to punish him for being alive. He avoided mirrors, turning his face away from any reflective surface. When she asked why, he simply said, I don't like what I see, and he refused to walk without his brace. Even when his steps seemed steady, he kept the metal frame strapped to his leg, his hand always gripping the polished wooden crutch. One afternoon, she caught him tracing a small scar behind his ear. It happened that night, didn't it? She asked softly. He froze. The car accident, she continued, gentler now. The one that took your mother. He swallowed hard but didn't speak. His knuckles whitened around the crutch. I'm sorry, Sophia said, voice low. You don't have to talk about it. He gave a faint nod, shoulders trembling. For a long while, neither spoke. The only sound was the wind brushing against the glass. The staff treated him with a politeness so thin it was almost fear. They bowed their heads when he entered a room, answered questions in clipped tones, then vanished as quickly as possible. One afternoon, Sophia overheard two maids whispering near the corridor. Mr. Moretti doesn't like the boy to see weakness, one said. Or emotion, the other added. Everything must be perfect, always. The conversation ended the moment they saw Sophia. Their silence said the rest. But with her, Nico changed. When she played piano in the drawing room, he would inch closer every day until he finally sat beside her. He'd watch her fingers move across the keys, then tentatively reach out to press one note, then another. Perfect, she'd whisper, smiling. You've got a good ear. Soon he was playing simple melodies, hesitant, beautiful. When he finished one without stopping, she clapped softly. See? You did it. That earned her his first smile. Small, shy, but real. It became their secret language, music, starlight, and sketches. She'd find new constellations in the sky each night, and he'd draw them the next morning with the precision of an engineer. Slowly, the boy who once spoke in nods began to use words again. Yet even in those moments of light, the darkness lingered. The mansion was full of eyes. At first, she thought it was her imagination. A flicker in the corner of the room, a faint hum behind the mirrors. But one evening, as she gathered Nico's papers from the study, she saw it. A tiny red light blinking in the corner above the bookshelf. A camera. She glanced up at it, pulse quickening. Nico, she said quietly, does your father watch these? He hesitated. He says it's for safety. Safety, she repeated softly, staring into the lens. Right. The red light blinked again. Steady, unblinking. That night, after Nico had gone to bed, she lingered in the conservatory. The moonlight painted silver patterns across the floor. She stood beneath the camera, staring straight into the glass eye. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then, faintly, she felt it, the unmistakable sensation of being watched. Her heart beat faster. If you're going to watch, she whispered, you might as well say something. Silence. But the camera tilted, almost imperceptibly. Sophia stepped back, a chill crawling up her spine. Sleep was impossible that night. Every creak of the house, every gust of wind against the windows felt deliberate. She dreamed of gears turning, eyes watching, and a boy tracing the stars while shadows moved just beyond reach. When dawn came, she dressed early, determined to shake off the unease. But when she reached her desk in the small study, she froze. There, resting on her notebook, was a single red rose. No note, no vase, just the flower, fresh, perfect, its scent faintly sweet, its stem wet with dew. She looked toward the corner of the room where the camera's light blinked softly in the morning haze. "Good morning," she whispered, though she wasn't sure who she was greeting, the boy's father or the house itself. Outside, the first rays of sun fell across the marble floors, cold and beautiful. Inside, Sophia felt something shift, a thread tightening around her, invisible and inescapable. The fortress had let her in. Now, it wasn't planning to let her go. The rose stayed on her desk for 2 days before it began to wilt, its petals curling inward like a secret refusing to die. Sophia tried to ignore it, to convince herself it was an innocent gesture of appreciation, but nothing in the Moretti mansion was ever innocent. By the third morning, she began to sense the rhythm of the house, the way footsteps echoed too long in the halls, how doors opened a second before she reached them. It was a place alive with power and ghosts, and somewhere between them lived Dante Moretti. She rarely saw him. His presence was felt more than seen, in the way servants stiffened when his name was spoken, in the faint scent of smoke and cologne that lingered in rooms long after he'd passed through. Until one afternoon, she saw too much. She was walking past the study, carrying a tray of Nico's sketchbooks, when she heard voices, low, sharp, and deliberate. She froze just beyond the half-open door. "The shipment leaves tonight," a man said. "Pier 7, under the ledger name. No one outside the circle knows." "Someone always knows," Dante replied, his tone quiet but lethal. "That's why they're buried before they talk." Sophia's breath caught. The silence between his words was heavier than the threats themselves. "Sir," the other man said hesitantly, "what about the boy? If your rivals ever—" A chair scraped. "My son," Dante said, voice low and dangerous, "is not a topic you finish." The room fell silent. Sophia stepped back carefully, heart pounding. She hadn't meant to eavesdrop, but now she'd heard something she couldn't unhear. She turned to leave, but her elbow brushed the edge of a vase. It wobbled. She caught it just in time, her pulse spiking. Inside the study, the voices stopped. Then came his voice. Softer this time, but unmistakable. "Who's there?" She didn't answer, didn't breathe. After a moment, the door creaked open and Dante stepped into the hall. His eyes found her instantly. Sophia froze, caught between apology and fear. "I was just returning Nico's—" "Sketchbooks," he finished for her. "Yes, I know." He held her gaze for a long, unreadable moment. Then, without another word, he turned and closed the door. The conversation, and whatever she'd almost exposed, disappeared behind the sound of the lock clicking. That evening, as she sat with Nico reading by the fireplace, she felt him before she saw him. Dante stood in the doorway, silent, his expression carved from shadow and restraint. Nico looked up immediately, eyes brightening. "Papa." The boy rarely spoke the word aloud, and the sound of it softened something in Dante's posture. He nodded to his son. "I see you're keeping Miss Evans busy." "We're reading about stars," Nico said. "Good." Dante's voice held warmth this time, a rare flicker of it. "Stars don't lie. They burn, but they don't lie." Sophia looked up. "That's what I told him." Their eyes met, brief, electric. For the first time, she saw more than the mask of the Mafia boss. She saw a man who hadn't slept properly in years. "Carry on," he said, turning to leave. But he lingered just a heartbeat too long before walking away. After that night, Dante began appearing more often, always at the edge of their lessons, never announcing himself. Sometimes he'd stand by the piano, watching as Nico played the soft notes Sophia taught him. Other times, he'd sit by the window, pretending to review papers while his gaze flicked between his son and the woman coaxing light back into the boy's world. The staff noticed. Their glances grew sharper, their whispers quieter. "Mr. Moretti never sits in," one of the maids murmured. "Not since his wife died." Sophia pretended not to hear, but she felt it too. The shift, the current, the silent pull. At dinner one evening, Dante surprised them both by joining their table. The meal was exquisite and silent until Sophia, tired of the tension, decided to break it. "Nico told me he built a telescope," she said lightly. "He's quite the engineer." Dante's lips curved faintly. "He gets that from his mother. She saw everything clearly." Nico's smile faltered. Sophia noticed. "He misses her," she said softly. "Sometimes he talks about her drawings." Dante's eyes flickered, a shadow passing through them. "He shouldn't dwell on ghosts." Sophia met his gaze across the table. "Then maybe you shouldn't either." The servants froze mid-step. No one ever spoke to Dante Moretti like that. His eyes hardened. "Careful, Miss Evans." But she didn't flinch. "You protect him from the world, Mr. Moretti," she said evenly. "But who protects him from your silence?" The air thickened. For a long, dangerous moment, it was only the three of them. The frightened boy, the man of stone, and the woman foolish enough to speak truth to power. Finally, Dante exhaled, slow, controlled. "My silence," he said, "is what keeps him alive." Sophia's defiance softened. She saw it then. The exhaustion in his eyes, the guilt stitched into every breath he took. "What happened wasn't your fault," she said quietly. He looked away. "In my world, Miss Evans, everything is someone's fault." Nico's small voice cut through the tension. "Papa, can we see the stars tonight?" Dante blinked, as if remembering the word. "Father." "Of course," he said. And for the first time since she'd met him, he smiled. Not the kind meant to intimidate, but the kind that almost hurt to wear. It was the smile of a man who hadn't forgotten love, only buried it under blood and fear. Later that night, as Sophia left the mansion, rain began to fall, light at first, then harder, drumming against the windshield of her car. The city blurred into streaks of silver and gold. She replayed the evening in her mind, the crack in Dante's armor, the way his eyes softened when his son laughed. Maybe, she thought, there was more to him than the whispers and the rumors. But as she turned onto the main road, headlights flared in her rearview mirror. A dark car followed, no license plate visible, keeping steady distance. Sophia's pulse quickened. She turned right. The car turned right, left. It followed. She reached for her phone only to see the signal drop to 0. The city lights faded as she neared the outskirts. Finally, she pulled into an old gas station, the rain coming down in sheets. The other car slowed at the corner, idled for a moment, then drove past. Too slow, too deliberate. Through the fogged glass, she caught a glimpse of a symbol on the rear bumper, a silver serpent coiled around a blade. She'd never seen it before. But something in her gut told her it wasn't friendly. She waited until the taillights disappeared, then exhaled shakily. Somewhere back in that mansion, Dante Moretti was fighting enemies she couldn't see. And now, whether she liked it or not, she was part of his war. The next morning dawned deceptively calm. Sunlight filtered through the mist, painting the marble halls in gold as if the night before had never happened. But Sophia couldn't shake the image of those tail lights, glowing red through the rain, marking her like prey. When she told Dante about the car that followed her, his expression didn't change. "You did the right thing not to stop," he said, voice clipped. "I'll have it checked." That was all. No reassurance, no comfort, just control disguised as calm. So when Nico's therapist requested an in-person session that afternoon, Sophia hesitated. "I could cancel," she told Mrs. Corvey. "The boss insists routine must not break." The housekeeper replied. "It keeps the boy grounded." Grounded? Sophia almost laughed. The Moretti estate was many things, but grounded wasn't one of them. Still, she didn't argue. Nico needed the session, and he needed her there. By noon, they were in the black sedan heading toward the city. The roads shimmered with heat, the sky bruised with coming rain. Nico sat quietly beside her, tracing stars on the window fog. "Do you miss her?" he asked suddenly. "Who? Your brother?" The question hit her like a pulse of air. "Every day," she admitted softly. He nodded, thoughtful. "I think my father misses my mom that way. He just hides it different." Sophia smiled faintly. "You're very observant, Nico." He shrugged, eyes still on the glass. "Papa says it's dangerous to notice too much." The session went smoothly, until the drive home. They were halfway down a narrow industrial road when Sophia noticed it, the same black SUV in the mirror. No plate, no headlights, just a silent shadow following too close. Her grip on the wheel tightened. "Nico, put your seatbelt on, now!" He obeyed instantly, sensing the edge in her tone. The SUV swerved, closing the distance. Then came the flash of metal, muzzle glinting in the sunlight. Gunfire erupted. Glass exploded around them. Nico screamed. Sophia ducked low, yanking him down beneath the dashboard as the back window shattered. The car jolted as she swerved hard, tires screaming against asphalt. Another shot tore through the side mirror. She slammed the accelerator, heart pounding. "Hold on, baby, hold on!" The sedan shot forward, weaving through the narrow street. The SUV stayed on them, relentless. Sophia turned into an alley, praying it wasn't a dead end. Bullets pinged off dumpsters. A stray round tore through her shoulder, white-hot pain that made her vision swim. But she didn't stop. The alley opened onto a side road. She jerked the wheel left, tires screeching. The SUV overshot the turn, slammed into a barrier, and didn't follow. For a long moment, the only sound was her ragged breathing and Nico's muffled sobs. "It's okay," she gasped, clutching her bleeding arm. "It's okay, sweetheart. We're safe now." But she wasn't sure she believed it. By the time they reached the mansion, Sophia's shirt was soaked with blood. The guards rushed to open the gates. One shouted orders into a radio. Another pulled Nico from the car. Then Dante appeared. The calm man she'd met before was gone. His eyes burned like storms restrained too long. "What happened?" he demanded. "Someone followed us," Sophia said through clenched teeth. "Black SUV, no plate." He turned on his men. "Lock it down, now!" The guards scattered, barking commands into radios. Dante's gaze snapped back to her. "Why didn't you call?" "There was no signal," she said. "And I was a bit busy not getting your son killed." His jaw clenched. "You could have died." "Someone had to protect him," she shot back. "Or should I have just driven slower so they could finish the job?" Nico flinched at her tone. Sophia immediately softened, pulling him close. "You're okay," she whispered. "You're safe." But Dante wasn't done. "Do you have any idea what that stunt cost me? If they'd hit you?" If they'd hit me? She laughed bitterly. You mean if they'd hit him? Don't make this about your empire, Mr. Moretti. This is about your son. The silence that followed was suffocating. Nico looked between them, eyes wide. Papa? He whispered. Something in Dante's expression cracked. He exhaled, running a hand over his face, the mask of the Mafia boss slipping. Go with Mrs. Corvey, Nico, he said softly. I need a moment with Miss Evans. The boy hesitated, then obeyed. When the door closed, the air thickened. Sophia stood there, breathing hard, blood still dripping down her sleeve. Dante stepped closer, voice low. You think I don't care? That I don't see what that boy means? Then show it, she snapped. Stop hiding behind orders and men with guns. He needs a father, not a fortress. His hand slammed against the wall beside her, not in threat, but in frustration. My silence keeps him alive. She met his gaze, trembling but unyielding, and it's killing him inside. The words hung between them, sharp as glass. For a moment, neither moved. Then Dante's shoulders dropped, the fight leaving him. He looked at her, really looked at her, for the first time. You're bleeding, he said quietly. It's nothing. He reached for her arm, his touch unexpectedly gentle. It's not nothing. The proximity made her breath catch. The man who terrified half the city was inches away, his eyes full of something that wasn't power or control, but fear. Don't ever risk yourself like that again, he murmured. Sophia's voice was soft but steady. Then stop giving the world reasons to come after us. Something unspoken passed between them, an understanding, a truce, maybe even a spark. Then he stepped back, mask slipping back into place. Go, he said quietly. Clean up. I'll handle the rest. Later, as Sophia sat beside Nico's bed, gently cleaning the small cut on his cheek, she felt Dante's presence behind her. He didn't speak, didn't move, just watched. Nico stirred in his sleep, mumbling softly. Sophia brushed a lock of hair from his forehead, whispering, You're safe now, little star. When she glanced up, Dante's eyes met hers across the dim room. For the first time, his gaze wasn't guarded. It was raw, filled with something dangerously close to gratitude. And beneath it, something else. Something that neither of them dared to name. The mansion felt different after the shooting. The guards were doubled, the gates locked tighter, and the air itself seemed to hum with tension. Yet in the middle of that guarded silence, Sophia decided the boy needed to live again, not just survive. The wound on her shoulder had mostly healed, but the deeper wound, the fear in Nico's eyes, hadn't. He jumped at sudden noises, refused to go near the windows, and barely touched his food, so Sophia changed the rhythm. She brought music into the halls again, not piano this time, something gentler, easier to move with. Every morning she'd hum softly as she tidied the study, coaxing Nico closer to the melody. One afternoon, she extended her hand. Come on, Nico, just one step. He frowned. I can't dance. Not yet, she corrected with a smile. But you can learn. He hesitated, then placed his small hand in hers. His brace gleamed under the sunlight as he tried to step forward. The first attempt was clumsy. His crutch slipped, his balance faltered, but Sophia didn't let go. It's all right, she said, steadying him. The ground won't run away from you. Nico laughed, a sound she hadn't heard in weeks. That was the beginning. Each day, one more step, one more note, one less shadow. Sometimes, when the music floated through the corridors, Dante Moretti would pause outside the door. He never entered, never announced himself. But the reflection of light on the polished floors betrayed him. He watched from a distance as Sophia counted softly, as Nico's small feet found rhythm, as laughter returned to a house that had forgotten what it sounded like. He had buried too many things in silence: his wife, his past, his joy. And now, watching his son dance, something inside him shifted. That night, when he passed by the servants' quarters, he noticed something unusual: smiles, genuine ones. The maids laughed quietly over dinner. The gardener hummed while trimming the roses. Even the air smelled different, less like steel, more like life. But in the kitchen, whispers lingered. "They say Mr. Moretti's gone soft," one of the guards muttered. "The boss who once burned rivals to the ground now spends evenings listening to piano music." Another replied, "Soft men don't stay kings for long." Dante's steps slowed at the doorway, their words like ice in his veins. He said nothing, only turned away, the flicker of warmth hardening into thought. A week later, Sophia found Nico in the conservatory, grinning. "I want to show him," he said excitedly. "Papa? Show him what?" "My dance, for his birthday. You said surprises make people smile." Sophia's heart melted. "You remembered." He nodded firmly. "Will you help me practice?" She smiled. "Always." And so they practiced, every evening after lessons, when the mansion's shadows grew long and the world outside forgot they existed. She taught him how to bow, how to follow rhythm, how to trust his legs again. When he stumbled, she caught him. When he hesitated, she whispered, "Again, Nico, you're stronger than you think." By the night of Dante's birthday, the boy could take 10 full steps without his crutch. The celebration was small, only family, a few trusted men, and an air of restraint that came from too many years of loss. The dining room glittered with crystal and quiet power. When the meal ended, Sophia nudged Nico forward. The boy limped to the center of the room, brace clicking faintly with each step. "Papa," he said softly, "I have something to show you." Dante's brow furrowed. "Nico!" But then the music began, the same melody Sophia had hummed for weeks. Nico moved carefully, counting under his breath. Step, turn, lift. The rhythm was uneven, fragile, but alive. His small hand extended toward his father. Sophia watched the transformation happen. The room, once cold, began to glow with something purer than light. When the music ended, Nico stumbled on the last step, but before he could fall, Dante was there, catching him. For a moment, the Mafia boss forgot who he was supposed to be. "You did this?" he asked hoarsely. "For you," Nico said, smiling through tears. Dante's jaw trembled. Then, slowly, he pulled his son into his arms. It was the first time anyone in that house had seen him hug his child. Sophia looked away, blinking back her own tears. Around them, even the servants paused, stunned by the sight of a man who once ruled by fear, now disarmed by love. For that one evening, the mansion was no longer a fortress. It was a home. Later, when the guests had gone and the laughter faded into the walls, Sophia sat alone in the conservatory, replaying the moment. Then the phone on the nearby table rang, a single vibration breaking the calm. She hesitated, then picked it up. "Miss Evans," came a voice she recognized. "Luca, Dante's enforcer." His tone was tense. "Is the boss still in the dining room?" "Yes," she said. "Why?" A pause. Then low and urgent. "Don't let him be alone. There's been a breach. Someone inside the house has been talking." Her heart skipped. Talking to who? "Someone who wants the Morettis dead." The line went dead. Outside, thunder rolled over the horizon, rattling the glass. And just like that, the warmth of the night vanished, replaced by the cold reminder that peace, in this house, never lasted long. Thunder cracked above the Moretti mansion, splitting the night open like a wound. The storm had rolled in fast, heavy and merciless, an omen, Sophia thought, of what was coming. Luca's warning echoed in her head. There's been a breach. She'd barely slept. The laughter from Dante's birthday had faded, replaced by murmurs in the corridors, tension in every glance. Even Nico had sensed it, clinging to her side as if the rain itself carried danger. By midnight, the mansion was quiet, too quiet. That's when she heard it, a voice, low and angry, coming from the east corridor, the security wing. Sophia crept closer, her shoes silent on the marble. The door to the surveillance room was ajar, blue light spilling into the hall. She recognized the voice immediately. Marco, the head of security, the man Dante trusted most. The boss has gone soft, Marco hissed into his phone. The woman's changing him. He's not thinking straight anymore. We can't afford that. Not with the family circling. A pause. Rain hammered against the windows. Yes, the boy too. If we have to, remind him what power looks like, so be it. Sophia's blood ran cold. Her hand trembled as she pulled out her phone and hit record. Every word seared into her chest like fire. The boy too. But before she could retreat, the floor creaked beneath her. Marco's head snapped up. Who's there? Sophia froze. Then, heavy footsteps. A shadow moved fast. She spun and ran. The hallways blurred. Her heart pounded like a war drum. Behind her, Marco shouted orders. Get her! She heard everything! Guards swarmed from the stairwell. She ducked into the nearest room, the library, and slammed the door. Her pulse raced as she backed into the shadows, clutching her phone like a weapon. Then, from the doorway, a small voice whispered, Miss Sophia! Nico, her heart seized. Nico, no, go back to your room. But it was too late. Marco's muffled voice carried through the wood. We told you to stay out of this, kid. This doesn't concern you. Why? Nico demanded. Why are you hurting her? A cruel laugh followed. Because she made your father weak, just like your mother did. Silence. Then the sharp sound of something shattering inside the boy's chest. My mother, he whispered. You mean she didn't die in an accident? Sophia's eyes widened. Nico, don't... But the truth was already spilling out like blood in water. Marco sneered. She died because your father crossed the wrong people. Her car was meant to burn. A message. And now he's letting it happen again. Nico's breath hitched. Then suddenly, footsteps. Running. Nico! Sophia lunged for the door, but the boy was already gone, sprinting down the hall, his brace clattering against the floor. She shoved past Marco's men and chased after him. The alarms blared through the mansion. Guards shouted, scrambling to find the boy. Dante appeared at the top of the stairs, his expression turning to stone as he took in the chaos. What happened? He demanded. Sophia's voice broke. Nico heard. He knows about his mother. For the first time, Dante's control cracked. He barked orders, his voice thunderous over the storm. Seal the gates. Get the cars. But Sophia was already gone, running into the rain. The storm swallowed her whole. Lightning flashed, revealing Nico far ahead, struggling down the steep road towards the docks. His crutch slipped in the mud, but he didn't stop. Nico, she cried, her voice nearly lost in the roar of the rain. Please stop. He turned once, eyes wide with anguish. It's my fault. She died because of me. Sophia's heart broke. No, none of this is your fault. He shook his head and stumbled onward, tears mixing with the downpour. He said it was a message for him. If Papa hadn't loved us, she'd still be alive. Thunder drowned her reply. When she finally reached the pier, her breath came in sharp gasps. The sea raged against the wooden planks, waves smashing against the shore. Nico stood at the edge, soaked and trembling, the wind tearing through his clothes. For a heartbeat, she saw him as Dante must have, small, fragile, trying to be brave in a world that had stolen his peace. "Nico," she whispered, stepping closer. "Listen to me. Your mother loved you more than life itself. You didn't take her away. Someone else did. Don't let them win by taking you, too." He looked at her, eyes full of pain. "I don't know how to stop hurting." Sophia swallowed her tears. "Then let me help you carry it." Behind them, headlights flared in the rain. Black cars pulled up, Dante's men and others she didn't recognize. Rival colors. Sophia turned sharply, shielding Nico with her body. The storm howled, the sound of engines grew closer, and from the shadows beyond the pier, someone stepped out, someone she never expected to see holding a gun. The rain fell harder, blurring the line between friend and enemy. Nico clutched Sophia's hand as the figure raised the weapon, and in that suspended heartbeat, Sophia realized the real war was only just beginning. The storm howled around the pier, swallowing the world in wind and rain. Sophia stood frozen, her breath trembling, her heart hammering, as the figure with the gun stepped out of the shadows. Marco. His face was calm, almost smug beneath the dripping hood of his jacket. Behind him, headlights flared through the mist. 3 black SUVs, men spilling out with weapons drawn. Rival colors. The Moretti crest had no place here. "End of the line," Marco said coldly, the gun gleaming beneath the rain. "The boss got soft. Time to fix his mistakes." He turned his aim towards the boy. Nico's fingers dug into Sophia's sleeve, his brace slipping in the mud. "Miss Sophia." "Stay behind me," she whispered. Marco laughed. How touching! The teacher protecting the crippled heir. "You think this changes anything?" The other men laughed too, cruel, echoing, sharp. The same sound that had filled the schoolyard that first day. And something inside Sophia snapped. Her fear burned away. She stepped forward, arms spread protectively before Nico. Her voice shook, but her resolve didn't. "You'll go through me first." The laughter rose again. "Lady," one of the men sneered, "you think you scare us?" Sophia's throat tightened. She looked back at Nico, his terrified eyes, his trembling lips, and something inside her rose like fire. She turned back to them and screamed over the storm. "He's stronger than any of you, because he survived what would have broken you." The words cut through the rain like lightning. For a heartbeat, even the waves seemed to pause. Then the leader lifted his gun. A single shot cracked through the air. Sophia flinched, but it wasn't her who fell. The leader's body jerked backward, a crimson bloom spreading across his chest. From the fog behind them, a familiar silhouette emerged, tall, broad-shouldered, soaked to the bone. Dante Moretti, his gun smoked in his hand, his eyes burning with rage and fear all at once. "Get away from my son," he growled. The pier erupted into chaos. Bullets ripped through the air, echoing across the waves. Sophia ducked, pulling Nico down behind a stack of crates. Dante moved like a storm himself, methodical, merciless. Every shot he fired hit its mark, but there were too many. A bullet grazed Sophia's arm. She gasped, pressing a hand to the wound. Nico clung to her, whispering through sobs, "Make it stop, please make it stop." Dante took down another man, then another, but as he turned to cover them, Marco's gun flashed from the corner. The shot came fast. Sophia's scream tore through the rain as Dante stumbled, the bullet tearing through his side. He dropped to one knee, still firing until Marco fell into the water, his weapon slipping beneath the waves. The pier fell silent, but for the storm and Nico's cries. Sophia rushed to Dante, catching him as he sagged against her. Blood mixed with rain on his shirt. "Don't you dare leave him," she whispered fiercely, pressing her hands to his wound. Dante's breath was ragged, his jaw clenched. He turned his head, eyes finding Nico, kneeling beside them, tears streaking his face. "I told you," he murmured weakly. "My silence kept him alive." Sophia shook her head. "No, it's your love that will." For the first time, Dante's iron composure broke. He reached out, gripping both their hands, the fortress he'd built around himself finally collapsing beneath the weight of what he'd almost lost. Nico pressed his small hand over his father's. "Please, Papa, stay." Sirens wailed in the distance, growing closer. Dante's men appeared through the fog, guns lowered, faces pale, but Dante's voice, though faint, still commanded everything. "Disappear," he ordered, his tone final. "No one touches them, ever again." He turned to Sophia, his eyes heavy but resolute. "Keep him safe. Dante, promise me." Sophia swallowed hard. "I promise." He gave a small, weary smile, then let his hand fall into hers as the sirens reached the edge of the pier. The storm began to break, the rain softening to a mist. Sophia held Nico close, their hands still intertwined with his father's. For the first time, the boy didn't tremble, because he understood now. His father wasn't weak. He was human. And the woman who had stood between them had just changed everything. As the flashing lights painted the horizon red and blue, Sophia whispered to Nico, "It's over." But deep down, she knew. The storm was only pausing, not ending. The world had grown quiet since the storm. The Moretti mansion, once alive with guards, whispers, and power, now stood empty, its marble halls stripped of presence, its iron gates left open to the wind. The city whispered stories of its fall, that Dante Moretti was dead or imprisoned, or had simply vanished into the shadows he once ruled. No one knew the truth, but Sophia did. Not through facts, there were none, but through a certainty in her chest, as if somewhere, in some corner of the world, the man who had once silenced a city was watching over his son in secret. Weeks had passed since the night at the pier. The gunfire had faded. The blood had been washed away by rain and time. Now, Sophia and Nico lived far from the city, in a modest house surrounded by golden fields that bent gently with the wind. It was peaceful here, real. Every morning, sunlight spilled through the curtains, and she would hear Nico's laughter from outside, soft at first, but growing stronger every day. He had shed his brace 2 weeks ago. "Watch, Miss Sophia," he called now, sprinting across the grass, his steps uneven but sure. She smiled, her heart swelling as she watched him stumble, catch himself, and keep running. "Slow down, you'll fall." He laughed over his shoulder. "Then I'll get up again." That was what he'd learned. Not from lessons or therapy, but from life, pain, and love that refused to give up on him. As the afternoon sun dipped low, Sophia returned to the porch, wiping her hands on her apron. The mail truck had come earlier, leaving a small brown package on the steps. No name, no return address. Her pulse quickened as she picked it up. Inside was a small wooden box, finely carved. When she opened it, light caught on something silver, a necklace shaped like a shield, simple yet elegant. Her breath caught. There was a note folded neatly beneath it, written in firm, familiar handwriting. "For the woman who taught my son courage." DM Sophia pressed a hand to her mouth, a tremor running through her. The handwriting was unmistakable. Dante Moretti's, steady, deliberate, and filled with the kind of restraint that said what words never could. Her vision blurred with tears, but she smiled through them. She clasped the necklace around her neck. The metal was cool against her skin, but beneath it was warmth. Memories of a boy's laughter, a father's redemption, and the fragile miracle of second chances. When she stepped outside again, Nico was lying in the grass, staring at the sky. "Look, Miss Sophia," he said, pointing upward. "It's like the clouds are dancing." She lay down beside him, smiling softly. "Maybe they're celebrating." "For what?" "For you," she whispered. "For being free." He turned to her, grinning. "Do you think Papa can see us?" She looked toward the horizon where the fields met the distant road. "Yes," she said. "I think he never stopped watching." As if on cue, a low hum drifted through the air, the sound of an engine. A black car rolled along the dirt road beyond the fence, its windows tinted, the driver unseen. It slowed for a heartbeat near the field, then drove on without stopping. Sophia's hand brushed the necklace at her throat. She didn't move, didn't call out. Some things she knew were better left unsaid. The wind carried her whisper into the golden light. "He's free, Dante. He's really free." Nico laughed again, his voice echoing across the open fields. The camera would have pulled back then, rising slowly above the waving grass, past the quiet house, and toward the skyline of the distant city. The storm that had haunted their lives was gone. But somewhere beyond the clouds, the legend of the Morettis still lingered, like thunder waiting for its next awakening.